in the huge block, racing for the bookend score. Is he gonna get there? And they say he does!
And a big D right there. And the bookends.
What a dive and what a catch.
Welcome to another edition of Live with Lep. We got a great show for you tonight. Totally accidental, but we got the J crew. We got Jonny, we got James, we got Josh, and then we got Jake. Let's dive right in to the hour-long conversation with the center handler from the DC Breeze over the past half decade, Jonny Malks, joining us from not in the DC area, but out in the Pacific Northwest. Jonny, I understand you're out now in Seattle. How's life in the Pacific Northwest?
Yeah, things are good. Just settling in here and kind of getting my legs under me, both metaphorically and physically. So I'm enjoying myself.
2024 was a busy year of Frisbee for you, from winning your first division championship in the UFA to playing club to winning a gold medal at Worlds with Team USA. I mean, you're still young. You're a few days away from your 26th birthday, but how's the body feel kind of in the aftermath of all the ultimate you played in the past, 10, 12 months?
Yeah, it's great. I tried to make a point this off season, in spite of it being a little bit shorter than usual with tryouts and things like that, to take like 2-3 solid weeks off, maybe toss here and there, but no like super intense body work. And then after that point, I've just been going all out training for the season, and some tryouts coming up. So nothing lingering right now. Actually just got back from a track workout, so body's feeling as good as ever, and that's exciting. Never take that for granted, for sure.
Am I correct in assuming that the tryouts you are alluding to are for the U.S. World Games team that are just a few weeks away?
Yeah, those will be coming up February 1st, so that's the main thing on the mind right now, although there's also been some beach Team USA things. We have a training weekend coming up, and had those tryouts as well. So it's been more ultimate, which can be somewhat of a curse, but it's mostly a blessing in that metaphor. So I'm enjoying myself and just trying to take things day by day.
I was on the phone with your beach coach yesterday, and there's a chance that I may try to swing by the sideline at layout sometime this weekend. We'll see whether or not that comes to fruition. But yeah, I'm curious, did you try out for the World Games team 4 years ago?
No, I wasn't. I didn't apply that cycle. I was like
Okay.
still, well, 4 years ago would be 21. Yeah, so I was still like getting my legs under me. That was like my first year like really playing for the Breeze. I like had done a few years before that, but only played a couple games, and then had my ACL injury and broke my wrist and was out for a couple years. And that was like the first year that I thought I could really like play again, which was exciting, because in spite of the fact like trying to play before the pandemic, coming back from injury, and then getting back into it after, there was a chance that I like just wouldn't have gone back to playing like competitive ultimate after the pandemic. But yeah, props to the folks in DC for bringing me back, and that was kind of the first year I thought I was like I could be good at this again. So yeah, it wasn't really even on my radar, so I'm grateful to be there now.
What's the feeling heading into this edition of World Games tryouts? You've tried out for other national teams with success and have had plenty of success in all the ultimate you've played, but this is the most exclusive team, the toughest team to make in the world, quite literally. What's the feeling as you head into tryouts?
Yeah, I think like thinking about it, how you just described it, I've done plenty of that, and it's like super nerve-wracking to do it that way.
Not useful,
So,
perhaps.
I mean, it's amazing to consider like the friends I've made and like the folks I know who have been able to reach that peak. I have a lot of respect for them when I think about it that way. But when it comes to like my chances, I think like, whoa, how is this even on the table? So for me, like approaching it mentally, it's mostly just been like telling myself each day, like each workout and throwing session and whatnot, that like I belong here and I'm excited to be here. And then I think as far as the tryout itself goes and approaching that, I think the best thing I can do for myself is treat it as kind of the coaching staff, especially the head coach, Maddie Sang, has been like preaching throughout a lot of the process so far, which has mainly just been a couple emails and a Zoom call, which is like we are already a team, and to be a part of like this iteration of the team is already a very special privilege that I definitely don't take for granted. And so going into the weekend, treating it more like an opportunity to build and be an instrumental part of that team's growth, I think is a lot more helpful to me than treating it like I'm in competition against my peers, because that's never been, I think, the most healthy drive for why I play or why I enjoy playing. So trying to take that mindset. And I'm also just really excited to like see my friends and play some good Ultimate, because being out here means I've made a lot of new friends, but also haven't been with my folks back in DC as much. And luckily, a lot of my friends from there are trying out as well. So it'll be a fun reunion. And mainly I'm just trying to keep it fun and play the best I can.
Yeah, basically the whole Breeze O-line will be there or something like that. So you guys have had a lot of talent in DC through the years, and a lot of them have won gold medals for Team USA. You told me a week or two ago that you didn't think you'd have breaking news tonight about your UFA plans for 2025. Is that still the case?
Still nothing definitive. I am gonna be on the phone with uh my coach Lauren tomorrow evening. So I may have more report after that, but um nothing as of yet. Uh Probably if I do end up playing, it will be for DC again. But we're just gonna have to see. Yeah.
Gotcha. I'm glad you brought up Lauren, because that was one of the questions I had for you. I was curious. I know how much respect and love y'all have for Daryl, and then it just felt like a pretty seamless transition to Lauren, with many of the same assistants and so much of the same team culture. Like, how would you characterize the biggest differences in the Breeze from the Daryl era to Lauren last year?
Yeah, I think Lauren, well, first Lauren brought Lauren, which is she's, the best coach out there by a lot of metrics, or like up there with the best you're gonna get. And she is particularly very good at just caring for her players and making sure that like the individual relationships are set up both with herself, the leadership, and just teammate to teammate to make sure that folks are set up for success. As far as like the transition from Daryl to Lauren, I think what Lauren brought that was most refreshing for us on the Breeze was like a newfound energy and perspective on the UFA in general. She had never coached pro before, so it was really fascinating and wonderful for me to see not only the growth of the team, but her growth as far as a leader, leading in pro, which can be so different when you're trying to communicate with refs, manage the game clock, stuff like that. And I know that from, our first night in Salt Lake through that division championship, she grew exponentially. And I think it really showed in the way that games were managed and in the way that players were managed. And all the while she was bringing that just incredible Lauren energy and Lauren experience that we know her for in sort of other playing venues. So yeah, it was an incredible experience to be coached by her. And I would obviously love to play for her as much as I can moving forward.
We shall see if the logistics work out for 2025. I was curious to ask you to dive into kind of the history of the Breeze offense, because I've heard that it's your offense or the William and Mary offense that you turned into the most successful offense in the history of the league over the past couple of years. So, like, if you had to, aside from the basics of, all offense and ultimate is creating space, blah, 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 like, what are the key tenets of your offense, and how did this come to be the system that you believe in and brought to DC to such great success?
Yeah, so I think starting out, before I get into like a few of the main things that I was focusing on when I first brought the offense over, I think it has since morphed into its own thing, and I definitely can't take credit for it. But I think like it is a lot dependent on like the kind of players that we have. So I noticed a similarity in players across what I was playing at college and on the Breeze in 21 when I came over. I mean, like actual personnel like Gus Norbaum I was playing with on O, and Musa Ja also played with us at William Mary. But additionally, we were looking at folks like Jeff Wodach, an incredible like connector is how I kind of term it. So like taking, the cutting motion and moving it into the handler space and being a connector for a lot of what we were working on. So just crediting like individual talent. Obviously, Rowan was very enthusiastic about bringing the offense, was one of the key cogs in the offense for many years. And then that talent has like grown and like we've added more. So like Elliot fit in so well last year, for instance. So moving forward though, the like main thing that we were focusing on at first was trying to get the variance down in what we were throwing. So we were having a look at like, how can we throw 100% passes until like a 98% opens up? And so what that looked like at first was basically like not worrying about like chunking down the field as much, but like swinging it side to side as much as we could. And then having that motion lead to some like chisel cuts from handlers. So like getting upfield momentum from the handler space, and then having those chisel cuts lead into kind of opportunistic deep cuts from a shallow space. And so that essentially led to this, like what a lot of people notice about it at first being this kind of like a lot of handlers buzzing around the disc kind of style, to get the disc moving side to side and to keep the disc moving quickly with 100% passes. That also, the kind of buzzing around the disc led to what I think probably Rowan was the main progenitor of, that kind of like inside flick to a very small window, which was how we were gaining that upfield momentum. And then incredible cutters like Cole Jurek are able to like take that shallow space and turn that into deep cuts, from what I think has also been termed as more of like a Japanese style of like not necessarily cutting before the disc is in the air. And so I think the offense is at its best when it's doing that. It doesn't always do that. And that's why like we've been vulnerable, certainly at different times in the past. But when it's hitting, that's kind of the notes that I'm thinking of. And yeah, I just want to give like all the props we can to the cutters, because it like, especially in the first couple of years of going in and being like, this is kind of, people are thinking of it more as a handler driven offense, which isn't necessarily the case, but it led to a lot of the cutters having to like find their own rhythm rather than having these very prescribed cuts, which I think was a journey for a lot of them, and sticking with it, they've found success too, which I'm very proud of them for that.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing. That was all fascinating and way more complex and thoughtful than Pavlianis in our YouTube chat. So that goes without saying. But Jonny, I really appreciate it. The East Division, which you may or may not be playing in next year, has long been the toughest division in the league. And last year was no different. And it feels like next year, with the moves Toronto's making, ironically, we're about to bring in a guy who's leaving the East Division. I don't know if it's to have a chance, but I mean, you've had a lot of battles with James Pollard's Philly team, and obviously New York and Boston through the years. Like, what's it been like for you in the Breeze competing in the East, and knowing that, every game, especially on the road, is a really tough challenge that could go either way?
Yeah. I think for me, it's like it makes the whole endeavor of a season more exciting, because as we've seen in our close battles with Philly over the last few years, as we've seen with our close battles with New York over the last few years, a lot of opponents I could name, Boston, like, you know, more than half of the games you're playing are going to be like very close, meaningful games. And I think that in my mind, ideally, that would prepare the team coming out of that division, and historically it has, to like perform very well in the postseason at championship weekend. And so I think that like my fellow DC folks and I feel like a responsibility unfulfilled at last championship weekend. So that just motivates us further. I think historically that has sort of bared out. And so I think it's the sort of thing that like iron sharpens iron, and it makes for very exciting in-season drama, which I think can be felt palpably on the field and for fans as well. So it's always exciting playing in the East. I think it makes me a better player as an individual, and it's really fun.
Yeah, that's well said. And there's just a lot of, I mean, there's been so many great games, games that you saw coming, and then, games that just kind of come up and sneak up on you. Like Philly has had you guys beat it seemingly a bunch of times, but they've never actually gotten to the finish line. And as we welcome in James Pollard, one of the new members of the Minnesota Wind Chill, but spent the last, I believe, 6 seasons with the Philadelphia Phoenix. I mean, James, what comes to mind most when you think about the battles you've had with Jonny and DC?
Uh, Disappointment. We always go into those, especially DC, because especially with Daryl. Daryl used to coach in Philadelphia before he moved down to DC, so we knew how he liked to coach, and we knew them very well because we're all really close. So it was just like, all right, we're going in this game. We know exactly what they're going to do. We can go in battle and just somehow just short at the end of it. Unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, Jonny, there have been a number of great escapes against Philly through the last few years.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, at the end of a UFA game, I usually have a very good sense of like who's winning and who's losing, There are times where it's wrong. I think a couple of times in those Philly games it's been wrong. But like I can't remember very often other times that sense has been wrong, just with the clock and like the way possessions bear out. So it's there's some kind of magic that happens sometimes, I suppose. But it certainly has been close, and I definitely do have to give it up for my Phoenix fellas. They are really tough competitors, and yeah, we love playing against them. It's always a fun vibe.
Good deal. Jonny, it's always fun talking Frisbee with you. I really appreciate your thoughts and insightfulness, and best of luck in World Games tryouts and making decisions for 2025. Look forward to hearing about what they are whenever they come to fruition. Thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Should know about that stuff by the end of the month. So peace.
Cool deal. That's Jonny Malks of the DC Breeze, and now we're here with James Pollard, and I guess we should shift the conversation from the East Division to the Central, because that's where our next three guests are all playing in this year. James, does that sound weird to think of yourself as a member of the Wind Chill in the Central Division?
A little bit, it does. I definitely decided. I knew I had to decide quick, but yeah, it definitely is definitely a little weird.
So take me through the conversations you had. I know you played some Club Ultimate with a Minneapolis team this fall, but like, how did the recruitment process go, especially with the defending champions?
So I'm so glad you asked. I was hoping you're going to ask that question because only a few people know what actually happened. So it started because last year I decided to play with Minneapolis Dragon Thrust, the mixed team. And I was just a travel player, so just coming in and out for a couple practices and going to tournaments. But at the end of the season last year, Ben Feldman reached out to the Phoenix about me going on to end of season loan with the Wind Chill because they had some injuries, and they weren't sure if they're going to be able to play. So they reached out to see if I would play the last two regular season games, which would have been the New York Empire game and I believe Detroit Mechanix game, and then playoffs. Uh, Phoenix signed off on it and left it to me, and ultimately I didn't want to dip out mid-season. I would have missed our Pittsburgh game that was live streamed on NBC Sports Philadelphia. And with how much I do and what I've done for the team, I was like, it's not right to leave and miss a game to go join another team. So that's where it started. So then after the season, I knew Ben was probably going to reach out immediately, and he did in October when he could. I thought about it, and then with the way things, especially the club scene, the men's club scene in Philly is going, I was like, all right, let me go see how it is for a year, learn, grow, and then hopefully can bring that back to Philly and instill it here and then lead us to a championship eventually.
Interesting. So you still think of yourself as a Philly guy and envision yourself going back and playing for the Phoenix again, it sounds like.
I do. I was born in St. Louis, Missouri, so I know what Midwest winters are like. I don't want to do that again. Um, so
It's not like Philadelphia's in the Bahamas or anything like that.
it's not, we don't get nearly as much snow. It's not usually as cold as it is in Minnesota.
That's fair. So you signed on with the wind chill. I mean, what's the mindset for you as you head into training camp and the season? You know, the wind chill are the hunted right now in the UFA, whereas you've been, kind of on the underdog team trying to hunt the top dogs in the East. Now it's got to be a little bit of a different mindset for you.
A little bit, but with our social media and stuff, we've kind of been putting the targets on our back anyway, especially the last couple of years with the games we've been putting on and the trash talk we've been talking on the internet. So it really, I've been going into it with the target on my back anyway, and that's just how I play. Is I started my career in the UFA as guarding Ben Yacht as a rookie. So like I always came in as like, all right, you have to prove to me why you are Ben Yacht, why you were one of the best players in the league, and that's how I've always gone into matchups. So I'm excited for a new division. Uh, I don't know that much personnel wise compared to what I do in the East Division, but they don't know as much about me. They don't know what they're going to get from me. So I'm excited for it.
You bring up Yacht. I'm curious to ask, who's the guy that you've had to guard that's given you the most problems? Is it Yacht or is it someone else?
Oh. I mean, if you want to go like numbers, it's probably Yacht just because of the amount of years he was on O line and I was on D line. I want to say, if we're talking like a specific game, probably Antoine Davis when he was on Atlanta in that super division that we had. And he still guards me in recent years. He's been guarding me, and he's definitely been the toughest matchup for me.
Is it just his combination of speed and strength and physicality, or what is it about Antoine?
That, and then just also the familiarity
Yeah.
too. And he's one of the few people that has the quickness to take away the unders from me. Some teams are just like, we'll prevent him from going deep. We'll make him a thrower because that's a little bit less of a issue compared to him as a deep threat. But Antoine's one of the few people that has the closing speed that could close on some of those unders. So sometimes I just don't get the disc, especially this past year when we were in New York at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, it was ugly. That was an ugly one. But there were a lot of really compelling ones. And man, I think about all those games a lot because, the Phoenix, I don't need to tell you, have not beaten New York or DC in a long time. But you were so close in so many different games. And it's like every kooky thing that could have happened. And the end of regulation or the end of single overtime, anyway, I don't need to rehash it with you. Um, who first gave you the nickname Big Game James, and how do you feel about that nickname?
I love the nickname. Philly legend, former player coach, Trey Katzenbach, back in I want to say 2017, just started calling me that, and then it didn't really stick. No one else really called me it except Trey, and then after like the next couple of years, it kind of stuck with me. And it mainly just came from I was like a solid player, but then just out of nowhere, I just have a really big game. And that's how it came about. So Trey Katzenbach is the one who gave me big game James.
That's cool. Trey's a legend. For those who don't know, like Trey, played in the UFA in like late 40s, early 50s, maybe. Like he was just timeless and ageless and, was just the ultimate possession handler in terms of not giving the disc away and keeping
Yeah.
things moving.
I want
I
to say he
forget.
was like 45 or 46 in
Yeah,
18 when he was the player coach for the Phoenix.
that's right. Forgot he was the player coach. Yeah, I got a lot of respect for that guy. What a dude. Uh, on this episode of the show, I not only have a bunch of Midwestern guys playing in the Central Division this year, but I've also, other than Jonny, of course, got a bunch of guys who've kind of made their bones on the D line. And then you switched over to O line, and I'm just curious to get your thoughts on like the vibe between being a D liner versus being an O liner, and like the glory of the stats that come with the O line versus the toughness and knowing that you're always at a disadvantage on D. Just how you view that mindset, as I understand. I think I read a quote from Feldman saying that you're one of the best defenders and end of quarter guys, and I imagine you'll be back on D for Minnesota, but who knows?
It interesting. I love defense. I love offense. I love the on the defense, I love the guarding someone, getting the turn, hearing them breathing heavy and just like, oh, I'm not nearly as tired as you. So I'm going to just work you on this turn and just run you. On offense, it's a little bit different when you're going like 100% and then you turn in and you're just like, man, this sucks. So you like try to like play as little defense as possible. Like, especially me, like I'm a deep defender. So I try to bait the deep throw. I want the deep throw to go up because I'm confident in my ability to go make a play. So especially on the O line, I'm like, all right, how can I situate myself to where this throw will go up quickly so it's not a drag out point and we can go make a play.
Yeah.
It's tough in the East Division when you got teams like DC that as soon as they get the turn, they either huck it or call a timeout.
I guess, I mean, oftentimes if they call a timeout, that's a break for you as well, but I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Um, so what has the communication been like with Minnesota folks, and what is your plan for the season in terms of moving to the Twin Cities and kind of being a part of that community all season long?
Yeah, communication's been great. Been talking in and out. I have their plays, I have their chalk talks from last year about like their main core principles that they're probably gonna use again this year. Uh Planning to go out for close tryouts, stay the week, and then go to the first practices in February. And then also going out in March for our team retreat. And maybe going out one or two more times in that time, but also officially going to move beginning of April through August for the season. So I'll be out there the whole season to practice and the whole time I'm out there.
Basically, once the temperature gets warm enough, you'll head out there full time.
Exactly.
Last thing I wanted to ask you about before I bring in Josh. Most people may not realize that you were a college tennis player. You still
Mhm.
play tennis these days?
No, not really.
No?
Um,
Are you a tennis fan?
I am. I just don't. I basically watch the sport I mainly play. So like I'll watch a lot of Ultimate Games, but now that I don't play tennis as much, I don't watch as much, but I'll still watch like finals and stuff.
Gotcha.
I went to the U.S. Open semifinal with Alcaraz and Tiafoe a couple years ago, which was
That was a great one.
that was the Friday night before regionals. I got back at like I got back at like midnight and then had to wake up at like 5 a.m. to drive to regionals. But no,
Just regionals.
because mainly if I play tennis now, it would be with ultimate players like my friends. So like most people aren't going to be good enough for me to play with, so it wouldn't really be that fun or competitive for me.
You've never played tennis with David Richardson of the Flyers, have you?
I have not.
He played college tennis too. I played with him once.
Ooh.
He's pretty good.
That we
we
should start that. We should start it like UFA, like postseason, like in the off season, just like different sports. Like I know New York would play some basketball. We have those videos. Like who's the best athlete in the UFA?
yeah. I yeah, I've thrown out the idea of a championship weekend pickleball tournament. So I don't know if that can get off the ground.
I
You
mean, that's not fair for everyone else, so I'll win.
sounds like fun. Bring it on. Um, well, James, you're heading to a division that our next guest has spent the last like 100 years in. Josh Wilson of the Madison Radicals was originally a member of the Bluegrass Revolution in 2012 during the first ever season of the AUDL that has kind of disappeared into the memory. We can bring in Josh, and I mean, Josh, if you had to give James Pollard one piece of advice about April and May in the Central Division, what would it be? Josh, we're not hearing you. Doesn't look like you're muted. Pavlianis in the YouTube chat says, "Bring a jacket." That's not a bad piece of advice. I mean,
Oh,
James, what's the coldest game you've played with? There have been some miserable games in the East in April and May too.
oh. New York in 2022. It's like our second game of the season. It was like 40 degrees, pouring rain. It was bad. But also, like, I went to college in Philly. Like, I played in 6 inches of snow. Like, I know what it's like to play in the cold. Do I
Yeah.
want to do it now that I'm out of college? Not necessarily. But that doesn't mean that I'm just all of a sudden going to be bad because it's cold.
James, you haven't played a game at Bree Stevens Field, have you?
Have not. I've only been for a championship weekend the last time I was there and just watched when when Charlie and Nunez won their first title with New York.
That's right. That'll probably be one of the biggest adjustments for you is just like playing in all these new places and learning all the new wind tunnels and that sort of thing. And I mean, obviously the wind chill have developed a great fan base and their games at Seafoam or TCO are great, but Bree Stevens Field is still kind of the classic venue in the league, host of so many memorable moments, and their crowd is right on top of you.
Not worried. I grew up playing other sports. I grew up playing basketball. I love nothing more than a crowd. I love nothing more than shutting up the home crowd when I'm the away team. That's why
Uh,
that's why we always played well in DC. Like we'd always have Philly
yeah.
fans in there. That's why I'd always yell, especially last year, we'd yell, "Let's go Philly," because we had a little corner of their section every time.
I think we got Josh Wilson and his audio fixed up. Josh, you with us?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, we got you now. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Um, real quick before we let James go, like what should James know about the Central Division that he doesn't know yet?
Um, I guess defense wins games. Like Madison Radicals are built on it. I mean, even Minnesota, where he's going to, they're highly efficient on the turnover. So be ready to play defense, and if you're on offense, be ready to play D on the turn.
Yeah, I'll be fine. I'm
Or get
excited
the
for the
get the
challenge.
timeouts ready.
Hucks and spikes in for 2025, especially from the wind chill.
It is interesting though, and like I wish I had the numbers off the cuff, but turnovers per game in the Eastern Division are certainly a smaller number than turnovers per game in the Central Division. So it is a slightly different style of ultimate. And I think a lot of that is the caliber of defense that they play in the Central and the experienced defenders, all the timing of the double teams and the help defense and switching that the Radicals have done and other teams have employed that in the East they're great athletes and like great, awesome individual defenders. But I think the Central Division may be a little bit more about team defense, and that slows the game down. And Yeah, it's maybe a little bit more of a slog. Um, yeah, James, look forward to seeing you in a Winchell jersey. I know they'll miss you in Philly, but excited to see what the future looks like. Thanks for joining us tonight, man, and I will see you in the spring.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Go
Yeah.
Winchell.
James Pollard, newest member of the Minnesota Wind Chill. And now we can turn our attention to Josh Wilson. And Josh, I can't wait to hear your memories of like learning that professional ultimate was going to be a thing and trying out for the Bluegrass Revolution. And there are a lot of folks out there watching who are probably like the Bluegrass who? Like that team has gone far into the depths of history, but we got the footage right here and a young Josh Wilson, I think, in the very first Bluegrass Revolution game. So take us back, Josh. What do you remember about those early days and how it all began?
So I almost didn't even try out when I heard about it because I was living in Milwaukee at the time, and the closest team to me was Indianapolis. So I heard about the tryouts, and I was like, do I want to drive 4 hours for each home game? And then just at some point in my mind, you just clicked being like, why wouldn't I? Like, why not? So I ended up actually going to tryouts for the Bluegrass, Indy, and Detroit. I didn't make Indy because I only showed up to their third round of tryouts. I didn't even hear about the first two in time. So I think they almost had their roster set by the time I showed up. Bluegrass got back to me first. So I was like, yeah, I'll take it. And then Detroit got to me a week later. And I was like, sorry, I already signed with the Bluegrass out of Louisville at that time. So yeah, that's kind of how I got on there. It was crazy to think that I did that because it was like our home games was an 8-hour drive for me. So like Friday after work, I would drive down. I would stay the night at one of my teammates' houses, and then we'd hang out until the game. It was so different to how it is now, where like maybe it's from the outside perspective, but it seemed like we were just kind of like a ragtag bunch of guys who like just enjoyed playing Ultimate and wanted to play at the highest level that we could. And like our first game, yeah, against Detroit, when like Detroit won most of their games that year. I think they were like one win away from making the playoffs.
It was truly a different era.
Yeah, it was crazy thinking back at it. That was the year of Brody Smith on the Indianapolis AlleyCats. Yeah, it's good times.
Yeah, Ken Porter was on that first Detroit team, and they had some
Uh,
good dudes that came down from Toronto, I think.
he was not on the first year. Ken
He
Porter
wasn't?
got on the second year.
Okay. It shows what I know. Yeah, well, this is why I want to have you on because you really, I should mention you more when I talk about guys who have played every year in the league because you have been on a roster every year the league has existed, like Cameron Brock, like Kevin Quinlan, and I think technically like Travis Carpenter, although Travis is retired, he's not going to play in 2025. Travis missed a year with injury. You missed a year with injury, so you don't have the played in every single season. But
Mm.
you've played over 100 games. You've been in the league since the beginning. Like how if how would you characterize those early days? Like if you're talking to these young kids now, whether they're high school or college kids who have just kind of taken for granted ever since Ultimate has been on their radar, professional Ultimate has been a thing, and the Radicals draw, a couple thousand fans, and it's a big event, and it's an awesome, awesome thing. Wasn't always like that.
No, not at all. Like I think our first year on the Bluegrass Revolution, like anywhere we went, I think the highest fan count we had was probably in like 200 range. And like most games were going to be in like the 50 to maybe 100 on a good day. And like to see it evolve over time has been like fun. Like coming to the Radicals the next year, like my second year on a UAF or UFA, still getting used to saying that roster.
Me too.
Yeah, we were in the like 5 to 600s right off the bat. Like the crazy change immediately. And then watching it evolve even more of like the last few years. We picked up players who've like since starting playing Ultimate have watched the UFA and been like, I can't wait to play for the Radicals when I get the chance. So it's cool to watch it grow from like a newbie organization that's barely getting noticed. Like games weren't being filmed. Like there was no way to scout your opponents unless you knew their like club teams and the players on the club teams. So like now every single game is being filmed and streamed, and like not just filmed and streamed, like commentated and like well done productions. Like before, if you got any film, it was like just a camera on the sideline panning left to right. So it's been fun to watch it evolve over time.
Absolutely. And you've served as a captain for the Radicals, and you know, it's kind of been the Tim DeBile organization since the beginning. And Tim's still the owner and he's still around, but he's also the commissioner now. And that's one of the reasons he's no longer the head coach of Madison. And I know you guys got tryouts, I think, this coming weekend. I know the Radicals do like
Yep.
Saturday night, 10 p.m. to 4 a.m., something like that. What are Radicals tryouts like? And like, how late do they usually go?
So I should probably look at what time I think it's 10:30. I'm gonna look before I go, obviously, but I think it's like 10:30 to like 3 a.m. We'll do like the first hour will be testing. So you'll do like a 40, you'll do a vertical jump, and then you'll do like a conditioning, kind of like a shuttle run. And then on the other field, you'll have half the people doing 3v3s, just getting reps, getting warm. And then everybody gets split into 4 teams. We play round robin, 3 games, each lasting, depending on how much time we have left, 40 to an hour. And yeah, it's a high energy night. Like I hate how late it starts, but like as soon as you get moving, get it on the field, you kind of forget about what time it is.
Yeah, there was a time in my life I would have been all about that, and now it's not that time, and I would have trouble staying awake. I
I am
know.
on the same boat. It's a lot of caffeine.
I bet. New head coach though for the Radicals was the question I was working my way toward before I sidetracked myself. Jake Spyro, who has been working with Tim for as long as I can remember, I think since the beginning. How do you expect Jake to put his fingerprints on the Radicals in a slightly different way?
That's a great question. Yeah, Jake's been with our team since day one, so I've never known a Radicals without him. He's always been kind of the like assistant coach slash defensive coordinator, and has always had like a voice for the team. I'm kind of interested myself to see how dynamics change. Because we're like I would have said that we'd become defensively like run, but we've been that way since the beginning. So I don't think there's any way to make us more defensively or organized. So yeah, I'm not sure how he's going to put his own twist, but I'm excited to see.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a leadership vacuum, not in a bad way, but with Tim stepping down, and I know KPS, Kevin Pettit Scantling, who has grown into being a vocal leader, over the past 5, 6, 7 years, he's planning on stepping away from the team this year as well. I may be breaking that news right now. Kevin not planning to play this year doesn't mean he won't play ever again, but still working his way back from his injury, trying to open up some time for other things in life. So without, Tim and without Kevin, I know you are one of the veteran voices on the team. Andrew Mechanic is stepping away too, isn't he? Or is he
Yeah,
back?
yeah.
Yeah, he's stepping away too. So I know you've told me in the past that you're going to keep playing until they tear the uniform off you, right?
Yeah, it's basically the 2 ways I see myself stopping is when I get cut from the team or it's like no longer fun. Like if either of those 2 things happen, then it's like, all right, I'll go see what the rest of life has to offer. But yeah, I don't think we're actually going to see a leadership vacuum. We still have like good experienced players. Plus, Coach Ben is coming back again, so he's definitely going to be able to fill in. Like assuming Tim isn't as active, which I have a hard time seeing, just because I've been around Tim for long enough to know that it's hard for him to truly step away.
I
But then,
agree.
like, even if he had to, like, Ben was a huge energy shift for us last year. And I think him filling in any leftover space will stop that leadership vacuum from happening.
Yeah, that's a Jeopardy contestant, Ben Gagney Maynard,
Yes.
who has been the offensive coordinator of the Radicals over the past couple of years. Um, Josh, speaking of a guy named Jake who spent some time with the Radicals, our final guest tonight is a former teammate of yours, like everybody who's ever played for the Radicals. What do you remember about a young Jake Rubin-Miller first joining Madison out of the University of Wisconsin?
His energy, like Jake just brings this like positive energy that can't be replicated anywhere else. Like just his personality is fun to be around, and the way he plays and moves on the field is just like so fun to watch.
Did you see a guy that would be, top three in the league in blocks when he first showed up?
I actually did. Like, if you watch him, especially the way he fit into our system. So we do a lot of help defense, and he just sees where the offense is coming from and knows when his person's not a threat and is very good at getting those like explosive layout Ds, as we saw earlier in the highlight clips.
Yeah. Jake, you joined the Radicals, a team that had a ton of history and a lot of veterans. Like, what do you remember from that first? I don't know if you went to that all-night tryout or just got a spot as a young hodag who had talent, but like, what was it like assimilating in with all the veterans who've been to championship weekend and kind of had set the culture for the franchise?
I mean, it was a really great introduction to the league, I think. So I actually was kind of part of the team in 2020, before COVID shut that down. J-Dub, I don't know if you remember that, but I came to one indoor practice and got hand blocked like 3 times in a double team drill, and was kind of like, maybe this isn't for me. And then I did not do that tryout. I don't know why. I don't remember what I was doing, but I did not end up doing that tryout in the winter of 2021. And I mean, it's interesting being a Hodag because it's like all these people that you've seen their names over and over again. Brian Hart, Coolidge, like all these people that like are kind of immortalized. And then you add in Mechanix, you add in JW, you add in KPS, people that weren't Hodags but are real radicals, UFA kind of legends. And it was a great first year. Outside of one really bad thing that happened my first year, which was tearing my ACL, it was like awesome. I think I owe a lot to those older guys, and then also Tim and Spyro for kind of showing what that Central Division defense looks like, and I feel like I really got a handle on it quick.
Yeah. And now, I mean, the Chicago-Madison rivalry, if it had dipped at all, it has come totally back to life with the overtime playoff game last year in that crazy random 10-minute monsoon that
Mhm.
had to be one of the craziest things you guys have ever experienced on an ultimate field. And obviously, I've seen the Union making big moves in free agency. So, Josh, I know Chicago's coming for you this year.
Awesome. I'm excited. Like we've always had good rivalries, no matter like who was seen on paper as the more competitive team. It's always been great games every season.
Totally.
Yes, indeed. Josh, thanks so much for doing this. Really nice to chat with you, and best of luck with all the caffeine this Saturday night, man. I'll be thinking about you.
Thanks, Evan.
See you, J-Dub.
Thanks, J-Dub of the Madison Radicals, and yeah, Jake, great to have you on as well. Last year was your first year with Chicago after spending a year with Madison. Obviously, before that, like compare and contrast the two experiences for me of two Central Division teams that were both trying to kind of rise up and be, at the highest level you could.
I mean, it's funny thinking about records with this comment that I'm about to say, but like Union felt a little scrappier, which like I think they finished with the exact same record. My first year, the Radicals didn't make the playoffs, but like it felt like Union was really like kind of trying to get back to the peaks that they had in 2021 and 2022, which is kind of true of the Radicals too, but it was a little bit further removed. It was like a different group. I don't know. I think it actually felt very similar in a way, but I think I felt more removed from the personnel off the bat. Like I feel like I had to do a little bit more work in terms of like making friends and making relationships with my teammates. Whereas the Radicals was kind of like, all right, here's like 5 guys that I lived with in college that I already know, and I like don't really have to branch out socially. So I really liked that aspect.
You got what, 10 blocks in the 9 games you played before suffering the injury in 2022. You rehab, you recuperate, you're back with a new team. Did you surprise yourself with the number of blocks you were able to get in your first year with Chicago, which ranked number 3 in the league when it was all said and done?
So just adding a piece of information, there's actually another surgery in between there. I got my meniscus done last December, so about a year ago. I think I surprised myself with how well my body held up. Like my goal going into the season was play 12 games. And I ended up, I guess I sat one Detroit game and we had a playoff game. So it ended up being 12 all in all. But I think in terms of numbers, like, I guess it a little bit snuck up on me, but I don't think it was like surprising that I did that necessarily. Like, I don't know. It's really cool that I played well, I think, but otherwise, like, it wasn't like oh my God, I can't believe I did that. That was so out of my wheelhouse.
Cool. It did feel a little bit like a transition year for the Union with some guys stepping away, and now it looks like 2025 is like Chicago's vengeance tour with all the notable signings that you've had, guys that have been part of championship weekend Union teams coming back, signing, foreigners, most notably Don Desmarais, who has been the European star from the past couple of years. Like, how has the energy and vibe around the Union changed as you look toward 2025?
I mean, I think we all kind of feel like there's a higher ceiling there. Like, obviously, like, even if we had only gotten Nate, like, there's definitely a higher ceiling. But I think we're all kind of thinking, like, we haven't done anything yet. And so it's still, at the very least 12 hard games that we have to play and then playoffs and stuff. Yeah, I think it's kind of, people are coming at it with like a nothing that we do. I guess we haven't earned anything yet. So I think that's a really fun mindset to have. Yeah.
Tell me if I'm wrong though, but like, you just watched Minnesota win a championship and they won it all, I don't know, 5-6 weeks after you beat them pretty comfortably on their home field.
Yeah.
So that has to create a little bit of a why not us next year vibe.
Absolutely. I think it's more of I can't speak for everyone. I am thinking about it really one game at a time. And like championship weekend would be great, but like it is those initial, it's the games in May that are going to be really important to us. Like in the Central Division, it's like if you lose an away game at Indy, it's like a really tough battle back. Same with Pitt, same with, Madison. Yeah, I think obviously on paper our team looks really good, but I thought our team looked really good last year too. So it's kind of like we'll see what the preseason looks like.
I wanted to ask you about the work you've done in Youth Ultimate because I know that's really significant. But before I get there, what's the beginning of your Ultimate story? How do you find the sport and become so passionate about it?
So this poster actually, this is for Camp Kinderland. I don't know if that sounds familiar to you. You might have been talking to Ben Katz about it at some point, but my camp had a big Ultimate presence. There's some notable alumni. Obviously, Ben, a couple of UMass guys, Noel Sierra and Artie Alcoin, if you know them.
Mm-hmm.
Some members on the Oberlin 2019 women's team that won nationals. So there was like, I knew the rules. I think I don't really remember how to learn, or I don't really remember learning how to throw a flick, which I feel like is kind of one of the main like differentiators when we're talking about like Silver Spoon Ultimate players. And then my high school had a team So I got to play 4 years in high school with some really great players. Yeah, and then kind of Wisconsin. Dan Heyman, if you know Dan Heyman, who won the Callahan in 2007, he was my YCC coach. And I remember he pulled up his long sleeve sun hoodie in Blaine, Minnesota, and like had a hodag on his arm. And I was like, wow, I would love to. I hope I love my college ultimate team enough to get a hodag tattoo. And then like a couple of years later, I was like captaining the hodag. So I think it's kind of just been like building on everything, building on each other, kind of. Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever met Dan Heyman, but I voted for him for the Callahan because he was a senior the same year I was a senior in 2007.
Oh.
So I voted for Dan that year, and yeah, they were really good. We played them. I forget if it was my junior year or my senior year, and they took half on us 7-1,
Oof.
and then the final score was 13-7, and that really pissed them off that Wake
Yeah.
Forest got 7 on them. So that's the story I like to tell. They were yeah, that's right. It was that tournament actually. It was that tournament, Terminus in Atlanta when that picture was taken. That was a different game against George Washington. Luke always has my greatest photo ever queued up just in case we need it. So aside from playing Ultimate and being passionate about it, you are sharing that passion with so many young kids in the Chicago area. And there was an article about it recently I remember reading, and it just seems like you're making an impact in so many young kids' lives. And I wanted to give you a chance to talk about what you're doing and how you're doing it and what is it like?
Totally. So it's technically a part-time gig right now. I have another job Tuesdays and Thursdays, but Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I have reserved for being the youth director for both the Chicago Union as well as Chicago Union Cares, which is the nonprofit arm of the team. So the union runs a lot of like for-profit stuff. We're often in the suburbs because it's really easy to work with the park districts in the suburbs, whereas Chicago Union Cares can kind of be all across Chicago offering free programming. So it's been really cool. I really like it. It actually I started doing stuff like this in Madison. I ran some rad academies, is what they call them, like 2022 and 2023 when I was with Madison. And then talking with CJ O'Brien, the owner of the union, I kind of just transitioned into that role for the union as well. That was May of 2023. I guess I was doing both of them that summer. But yeah, so it's been really cool. I love the opportunity to play with kids. Like I feel like they see different things than I see. And so it's cool. It's so cliche, but like I do learn things from them. And like explaining things to people who don't really understand the concepts, like makes you understand it better. So it's been really great. I think it can be physically hard at times of like, oh geez, I have to coach a camp in the morning and a camp in the afternoon, 5 days this week. And then we have a Friday game. And it can just get super tough. Actually, that's what I was doing when I tore my ACL. But I think it has really, I really love doing it. I'll be honest with you, it has taken some of my joy away from playing. But thankfully, I wasn't really feeling that during the UFA season last year. But like as soon as the season was done, and I picked up with Haymaker for the series, like as soon as that was done, it was like I didn't play any Ultimate until tryouts, basically like 2 weeks ago.
Why did it take the joy away?
Just because I was doing it so much. Like I feel like I have a lot of other things that I want to be doing. And so when it's like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Sunday, I'm playing Ultimate, like I don't have time to do these other things. I think it can contribute to some just like I don't want to be doing this as much as I am. But that's for my job. You know, it's my job, so I can't complain.
Yeah. No, dude, I get it. It's, burnout is real, and even, doing something that you really enjoy nonstop changes how you approach it. And I've certainly had that feeling as I go back to the airport getting ready to broadcast another game, but at the same time, it's like this is what I wanted to do my whole life, and I can't believe I get to do it and get paid to teach Frisbee is a pretty cool opportunity too.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and I gotta say, thinking about our some of our new signings, which like not even all of them are public yet. Like thinking about practices. I'm not even thinking about games yet. Thinking about practices and matching up against some of those people. It's like, ooh, I'm ready.
Before we wrap things up, is there any news that you'd like to break on the show tonight?
I don't know if I'm allowed to do that. So I signed and everyone in the article signed, but otherwise I don't know if I don't know.
In which article? In Ian's article?
I think so. One of you wrote it.
I didn't write it, so I think it was Ian. Um,
I have a question for you also, Evan.
Bring it on.
You're done with me.
Bring it on.
So I realized when I've been thinking that you would look really good with an eyebrow piercing. And I'm wondering what the union or me personally would have to do for you to get an eyebrow piercing. 30 bucks? Is it championship weekend? Is it losing to Detroit? All of this is possible.
I mean, I don't want to shatter your dreams, so I will say it's possible, but it is far from probable, and it is very close to impossible.
Okay. I can work with those numbers.
Why is this something that you've thought about? What is it about my complexion that you feel like I'm missing?
I just think you have good bone structure for it. No, I'm not missing. I'm a big piercing proponent. I actually think while I have the time here, that the UFA should take away the rule that you're not allowed to wear piercings in games. Because I think that it is disproportionately enforced against different teams.
Well, I agree with you there.
You know, there's some Minnesota guys, there's some Pittsburgh guys who don't have to take their piercings out. Me, I'm taking out 6 or 7 every game. And I bet actually for the broadcasting crew, you don't have to take any out. So that's actually a plus for you.
So let me ask you like the 75-year-old man get off my lawn question. What is the appeal of piercing?
I think they look cool. It doesn't hurt very much. And then you get to wear jewelry.
Okay. But like I'm not fashionable. Like I literally
I disagree.
got this sweatshirt ordered in the mail the other day, so I'd have like more gear to wear for stuff like this. Otherwise, I'm just wearing my Cape Cod gear family stuff like I did last week and my Boston sports stuff.
Yeah,
I'm not that fashionable.
Great. You look great. You're keeping it tight. And I think so actually there's those Madison guys who are always impersonating people on Twitter. There's a couple Madison guys. There's one, he photoshopped it. It looks really good. I'll send it to you.
Oh, well, I feel like I may have seen this at some point that, you were tweeting up a storm and
It's awesome. So
those tweets are why I knew you would be an excellent guest for the show. Just because I knew you have a little pizzazz and personality to you, which is good. I just don't, I appreciate the thought and I certainly could use all the fashion advice I could get. But I don't view, I mean, you're welcome to try to really sell me on it. I'm not opposed to being coerced, but at the same time, I don't see my wife going for it, and I don't see me going for it, and that's pretty much everything.
That totally makes sense. I just think, at least from the preseason stuff, the UFA doesn't seem like it's going to have very much, intrigue or like excitement this year. And so I think that could really pep up a couple people. Like if it was like, if the Union win, Evan Lepler gets an eyebrow piercing, like that could really drive up numbers.
You think like the piercing community would like be way more into the UFA
people like betting. Look at Vegas. Go Bighorns.
I made a promise to I shouldn't say this. I made a promise to Brent Steep. I forget what my promise was, but it was something like if the Mechanix make the playoffs, I'll wear Mechanix gear at championship weekend. Something like that.
This is basically that.
I mean, ex except for the tattoo and piercing shop.
They would love you in there.
Who's they?
The people in the tattoo and piercing shops.
Yeah, again, I think I definitely, I'm not a tattoo guy and I'm not a piercing guy. Even though I do think I have really good earlobes, but
Yeah,
again,
you do. And
yeah,
eyebrows.
well, yeah. Anyway,
Look, I had to try shooters shoot. So
do you have any other questions, Jake, or should we wrap it
no,
up?
I think that was my main one. Been thinking about it for a while, a whole hour.
What's next for you? Is it Chicago Union Cares camp? Is it track practice? Is it team tryouts? What's next?
Next for me went like this week.
Yeah, what's next?
This is the start of our middle school indoor season this week. So we're having 2 of our like advanced practices in basketball gyms, and then we have 1 beginner session, which is tomorrow. But Thursday is my non-Frisbee day. So I do ABA therapy, if you know what that is. So I work with preschoolers with autism one-on-one. So that's my 8 to 3, and then my 5 to 7 is totally brand new players, 4th and 5th grade.
I'm sure that's not exhausting at all.
I love it. I'm so excited. Yeah, 3 and 4-year-olds right into 4th and 5th graders.
Well, that's all cool and respect, and I look forward to writing the story of the first guy from like a Chicago Cares 5th grade class that makes the Union. That you're the old wily vet at that point. You're like, I knew this kid when he was 10 years old, and he's the real big deal. I trust you'll let me break that story.
Of course. You'll have to break like probably 8 of them at a time, though. I have some ballers.
Cool. Well, keep forming the minds of America, but don't make them get piercings that they don't want to get. That'd be my advice.
Hey. Oh, I'm being persecuted here. Ask. I asked.
Don't push. Anyway, Jake Rubin-Miller, thank you so much for joining the show and being a part of this tonight. Fun chatting with you, and look forward to seeing you at some point this season and seeing the whole formation of the Union roster. I've heard rumors as well, but excited to see when it all comes together.
Totally. Thanks, Evan. Go you.
See Jake Rubin-Miller of the Chicago Union. And that'll wrap up our slightly longer than usual Live with Lep. We got started a couple minutes late, so we went 10 minutes late. But thanks to Jonny Malks and James Pollard and Josh Wilson and Jake Rubin-Miller. Thank you for watching. And obviously, shout out to Luke Johnson, the czar, producer, running the controls, once again from the West Coast. You don't know the lengths that Luke goes through to put this show on the air. He is the true star of the show. You can get this sweatshirt on the watchufa.com store like I did a week ago. Feels pretty good. I got one other that's coming up on a video soon. Anyway, thanks for being with us tonight. Next week, we got a good show, and we will talk to you then. Have a good night, everybody.